Welcome to Cheat Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My wife said 7 words to me over a kitchen sink on a Tuesday morning. By 8:14 a.m. the bank access was revoked, the insurance was restructured, and the smart locks had new codes she would never know. I'd been building this exit for 18 months. She gave me the green light without even realizing it. My name is Graham Collier. I'm 42 years old. I worked in cold storage distribution, logistics management for a regional warehouse network, temperature control, route optimization, compliance systems. Not glamorous, but it taught me one thing that changed everything: how to shut down a system completely while leaving no room for manual override. Fail-safes weren't suggestions in my world. They were gospel. I applied that same philosophy to my exit from a 16-year marriage. Natalie and I had 2 kids. Ruby, 15, sharp and twice as stubborn as either of us. Leon, 13, quieter but watching everything. They were the only reason I stayed as long as I did. That and the particular brand of foolishness that makes a man believe persistence can substitute for being wanted. Tuesday, October 5th. I was rinsing my coffee mug when she walked into the kitchen already dressed for yoga. Phone in one hand, keys in the other. She didn't look at me. "You forgot to take the trash out again." I checked the bin. It wasn't full. I said I'd get it that evening. "That's what you said yesterday. Don't bother. You'll forget again." I turned the water off and faced her. Something in her posture said this wasn't about the trash. It never was. "What's this really about?" I asked. She looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in weeks. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't anger. It was indifference. "My life would be easier without you." Not shouted. Not whispered. Stated. Like she was reading from a receipt. 16 years. 2 children. A mortgage. Thousands of small compromises and late-night conversations and shared history reduced to one sentence delivered with less feeling than she used to order coffee. I didn't argue. Didn't ask her to take it back. I nodded once, grabbed my keys from the hall table, and walked out the front door. It was 7:43 in the morning. What she didn't know was that I had been waiting for exactly this. I drove to a parking lot by Miller's Creek, 15 minutes from the house. A spot tucked behind an old textile mill that locals knew and tourists never found. I parked facing the water and pulled out my phone. Not the iPhone Natalie knew about. The burner. Prepaid. Registered under a business name that no longer existed. I opened the app one had built myself. Simple interface, 1 button. I had labeled it Reset. My finger hovered over it for maybe 3 seconds. Then I pressed it. The script I had written 18 months ago began executing. First, every password on every account tied to our home network changed simultaneously. Router, smart thermostat, security cameras, garage door opener, the smart locks I had installed last Christmas. Natalie had thought they were a gift. They were. Just not for her. Second, the banking alerts were rerouted. Our joint checking account, the one she believed we still shared, had been quietly converted 6 months ago. I was primary. She was authorized user. Past tense as of 8:03 that morning. Third, a series of automated emails triggered to our insurance company, our mortgage lender, and 3 utility providers. Each contained a formal notice of separation. Dated. Notarized. Signed 14 months ago during a business trip to Pittsburgh that wasn't really a business trip. My lawyer Dennis Pute had held everything. Recorded conversations. Financial statements. Screenshots of texts Natalie thought she had deleted. I hadn't been spying. I had been documenting. There is a difference. I sat by the creek and watched the water move. My phone buzzed. The iPhone. Her name on the screen. I let it ring. It buzzed again. And again. By the 4th call, I turned it off completely. The burner stayed on. Automated confirmations began arriving. Insurance policy restructured. Single holder effective immediately. Bank access updated. New credentials required. Mortgage account. Primary contact information changed. Each notification felt like a door closing. Not slamming. Just clicking shut. One after another. Quiet and final. I thought about Ruby and Leon. At school by now. Ruby had early band practice. Leon had math tutoring. Neither of them knew what their mother had said. Neither knew what I had been building for a year and a half. But they would. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. I had a 9:30 meeting with a man named Victor Chun who needed someone who understood cold storage from the ground up. Someone ready to start over. Natalie stood in the garage staring at the keypad like it had personally failed her. She entered the code 3 times. The same code they had used for 8 years. The screen blinked red. Went dark. She tried the garage door app on her phone. Connection failed. Back inside, she grabbed her laptop and opened the browser. Bank account login. Her username and password, saved in autofill, came back with 2 words. Invalid credentials. She tried again. Slower. Same result. Her phone lit up. First National Bank. Joint account status modified. Then Horizon Mutual Insurance. Policy holder update. Action required. Then the mortgage company. Primary contact information updated. Her hands started shaking. The thermostat on the wall blinked. The temperature jumped from 72 to 85. She walked over to adjust it. The screen read, Administrator access required. She entered the code. Denied. She checked the front door smart lock. Same. The Wi-Fi network on her phone showed connected, but nothing would load. She checked the network name. It had changed from something familiar to a string of numbers she didn't recognize. By 9:30 she had called me 17 times. Texted 12 messages that started with confusion and escalated to fury. What is going on? This is insane. You can't just lock me out of everything. I'm calling my lawyer. I didn't respond to any of them. At 10:15 she called her mother. Her mother told her to calm down. That I was probably just upset and would be home by dinner. Natalie didn't tell her mother what she had said to me that morning. She just said we'd had a disagreement. By 11 o'clock she was sitting on the couch staring at nothing. The house felt different. Same furniture. Same walls. But something fundamental had shifted beneath everything. The air had changed. She finally understood. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't me throwing a tantrum or trying to teach her a lesson she could wait out. This was an ending. And I had written it months before she ever opened her mouth. She sat surrounded by the pieces of a life she had been quietly dismantling for over a year without ever considering that I might be watching. Without ever considering that the man she had dismissed as invisible had been planning, documenting, and waiting with the patience of someone who understood that the most permanent exits are the ones no one sees coming. Ruby came home first around 3:40. Dropped her bag by the door, headed for the kitchen, phone already in her hand. Natalie was at the kitchen table, laptop open, papers surrounding her from the accounts she could still access. Mom. Ruby's voice carried that teenage mixture of concern and irritation. Why are you just sitting there? Natalie looked up. Her eyes were red. Have you heard from your father? Ruby frowned. No. Why? He left this morning. He won't answer his phone. Left. I don't know. Maybe. Ruby's expression shifted. Not to sadness. To something harder. What did you say to him? Natalie blinked. What? What did you say to him? Ruby repeated it slowly. Dad doesn't just leave. So what did you do? Ruby, that's not fair. You think I haven't noticed? Ruby's voice rose. You think I don't see how you talk to him? Like he's invisible. Like he doesn't exist in his own house. This is between your father and me. No, it isn't. Ruby pulled out her phone. Because I just got an email from him. Natalie went pale. Ruby opened it. Read silently. Then looked up and opened a Google Drive folder on her screen. Labeled, For Ruby and Leon. Bank statements. Text message screenshots. Hotel receipts. Calendar entries. All dated. All organized. All labeled with the particular methodical precision of a man who worked in logistics and applied it to everything that mattered. Ruby scrolled through it, her face hardening with each swipe. 3 hotels, she said quietly. In 6 months. Derek Sutherland. She looked up at her mother. Dad knew. He's known this whole time. The front door opened. Leon. Earbuds in, oblivious. He pulled them out when he saw their faces. Ruby handed him the phone without a word. He read. Scrolled. Read more. Is this real? He asked. Natalie reached for him. Leon, let me explain. He stepped back. Did you cheat on Dad? It's complicated. That's not an answer, he said quietly. The calm in his voice was something I recognized in him completely. Did you cheat on him? She couldn't respond. The silence answered for her. Leon handed the phone back to Ruby and walked upstairs. His door closed. Not a slam. A click. Final. Ruby looked at her mother for a long moment. You told him his life would be easier without you, didn't you? It wasn't a question. You know what the worst part is, Ruby said. Dad never said a bad word about you. Not one. He just left. And I don't blame him. The door closed behind her. I spent that first night in a motel off Route 40. The kind of place that rents by the week and doesn't ask questions if you pay cash. The room smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. It had a bed, a bathroom, and no memories. I sat at the small desk and opened my laptop. Phase 1 was complete. Accounts separated. Access revoked. Documentation triggered. Phase 2 was already in motion. I had signed a consulting contract with Victor Chun 3 weeks earlier. A mid-size cold storage operation that needed someone who understood the distribution side from the ground up. 6-month contract with an option to extend. Enough to rent a place and start over. My burner buzzed. Text from Dennis Pute. Received contact from her attorney. Forwarded your documentation packet. They're scrambling. I typed back one word. Kids. Emails delivered as scheduled. No legal issues with disclosure. Everything you sent them was factual and documented. I set the phone down and stared at the wall. Ruby and Leon had seen everything by now. Bank statements. Hotel receipts. Text messages between Natalie and Derek Sutherland, a man she had met through her yoga studio, from nights she had told me she was at her sister's house. I hadn't wanted them to find out this way. But Natalie had made that choice when she decided our marriage was negotiable and honesty was optional. My phone buzzed again. Ruby this time. Dad, where are you? I stared at it. Then typed, I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm sorry you had to see those documents. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Are they real? Yes. A long pause. I'm so sorry, Dad. My throat tightened. Not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Can I see you soon? I promise. I just need a few days to get settled. Is Leon okay? He won't talk to her. He's in his room. Tell him I love him. Tell him I'll call tomorrow. Okay. Love you, Dad. Love you too. I set the phone down. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the highway. I had burned down my old life in a single morning. But I wasn't rebuilding out of anger. I was rebuilding out of necessity. Because staying would have killed me slowly. And leaving was the only way to remember what it felt like to breathe. Natalie sat across from her attorney Brian Kendrick 3 days after I left. He was in his early 40s, polished, and had spent 20 minutes reviewing the documentation before looking up. Mrs. Collier, I'm going to be direct with you. This is one of the most thoroughly documented separations I've ever seen. She asked what that meant. It means your husband has been preparing for this for well over a year. He tapped the papers. These agreements are dated, notarized, and filed with the state. The financial restructuring was done legally. The insurance modifications followed protocol. Even the smart home changes fall under property rights because he purchased and installed everything himself. She asked if she had any recourse. He told her they'd focus on damage control, not winning. The affair changed everything, he said, particularly regarding asset division and custody arrangements. At 15 and 13, judges give significant weight to children's preferences. He looked at her carefully. Have you spoken with them since this started? She told him Ruby was staying at a friend's house. That Leon wouldn't leave his room. "That's going to be a problem," Kendrick said. He asked whether she had said anything to me the morning I left. Something that could be construed as requesting separation. She looked at her hands. I told him my life would be easier without him. Kendrick was quiet. "Did anyone else hear you say that?" "No. Just him." He made a note. "That's something at least. Your word against his. But given everything else he's documented." He let that trail off. 2 weeks later, Natalie showed up at my apartment and pounded on the door like she was trying to break it down. I opened it. She looked like she hadn't slept properly since I left. "You're trying to take my son from me. Leon asked to live here. I'm honoring his request. He's 13. He doesn't know what he wants. He knows he doesn't want to live with someone who lied to him for a year." Her face twisted. "You poisoned him against me." "I showed him the truth," I said. "That's not poison. That's clarity." I kept my voice level. "You want to be angry at someone? Look in the mirror. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Over months. And now you're dealing with consequences. Graham, please." She broke. "I'll end things with Derek. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point." I closed the door. The custody hearing was a Tuesday morning in late November. Small courtroom. Fluorescent lights. The judge's bench elevated like a fortress. Natalie sat at the opposite table with Kendrick. She dressed carefully, business suit, minimal makeup. Composed. But I could see her hands shaking when she reached for her water glass. Leon waited outside. He had asked to speak to the judge directly. Dennis had arranged it. Judge Sarah Holbrook had 20 years on the bench and a reputation for not tolerating games. Kendrick went first. He called Natalie to the stand. She talked about school pickups, homework help, weekend activities. All true. All beside the point. Dennis cross-examined. "Mrs. Collier, did you engage in an extramarital affair with Derek Sutherland?" She hesitated. "Yes or no, please." "Yes." "For how long?" 14 months. Dennis nodded. No further questions. I kept my testimony simple. My income, my apartment, the stability I had established. I wasn't trying to remove Natalie from the children's lives. I just wanted Leon to have somewhere steady to land. "He asked to live with me," I said. "I'm not forcing anything." Then Judge Holbrook called Leon in. He walked to the witness box with his shoulders straight and his voice steady. She asked him why he wanted to live with me. "Because my dad has been honest with me," Leon said. "My mom hasn't. And I can't trust someone who lies." "That's a serious accusation," Judge Holbrook said gently. "It's the truth." He looked at Natalie. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't live there anymore." The judge reviewed the documents for 15 minutes. When she returned, her decision was clear. Primary custody of Leon Collier is granted to Graham Collier. Natalie Collier will have supervised visitation every other weekend with the possibility of modification after 6 months pending successful completion of family counseling. Natalie's face crumbled. Ruby's custody remains joint with her expressed preference for weekend visitation with her father respected. Outside the courtroom, Leon hugged me. "Can we go home now?" "Yeah, buddy," I said quietly. "We can go home." 11 months later, I stood in the kitchen of a small house I had purchased on the outskirts of town. 3 bedrooms, a yard big enough for a grill, a garage where Leon practiced basketball. Nothing remarkable. But it was ours. Ruby was setting the table. Home for Thanksgiving from her first semester of college. Leon was in the living room with homework spread across the coffee table. The normalcy of it still caught me off guard sometimes. In the best possible way. My consulting work had grown. Victor Chun's operation had expanded, and I had taken on a permanent role as his distribution director. Good pay, reasonable hours, work that made sense. Natalie had completed her counseling. Supervised visits with Leon had graduated to unsupervised, though he still preferred being here. Ruby saw her mother more regularly now, maintaining the careful measured distance that worked for both of them. Derek Sutherland was gone from the picture entirely. My phone buzzed. Text from Dennis Pute. "Divorce finalized. Congrats." I set the phone down and looked around the kitchen. This wasn't the life I had planned when I got married 16 years ago. It wasn't the future I'd imagined when Ruby was born or when Leon took his first steps. But it was honest. It was mine. And it was enough. Ruby walked over and bumped my shoulder. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah," I said. "I really am." Leon called from the living room. "Dad, when's dinner?" "I'm starving." 10 minutes. Ruby grinned. "Some things never change." "Some things shouldn't," I said. That evening after dinner, after dishes and homework and the particular comfortable noise of a household that had found its rhythm, I sat on the back porch with a beer and watched the sun go down. Orange fading into purple, fading into dark. Natalie had said my life would be easier without her. She'd meant it as a weapon. But she had been right. Just not the way she intended. My life wasn't easier because she was gone. It was better because I had finally stopped waiting for her to change. Stopped waiting for permission to want more. Stopped accepting less than I deserved and calling it love. And somewhere in the wreckage of that marriage, I had found something I thought I had lost years ago. Myself. That turns out to be more than enough. Thank you for watching.